Welcome. I think the biggest challenge I got today is to be the speaker after the lunch. That's always where everybody's blood is sort of going to your stomach instead of to your brain. That's not helping, hopefully. Secondly, I have the word regulation in my title. That doesn't draw the big audience, especially not at these kind of events, I guess. But I think it's increasingly important. The third challenge I have with that is I'm not a regulator. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not even an online guy from a background, so probably the least experienced guy in this, but I'm very experienced in working in a tightly regulated market, running a land-based casino, and that of course has its challenges itself, and I think it's very relevant for those who want to move into that space to get appreciation of what it means for your business in terms of the speed of your business, the competition rate, taxes, and all of that. So let me start in giving you a view on that. This is what I call my social casino, by the way. This is one of our places. These people are hired, by the way, to get into the frame, but we call them our happy people. They're basically socializing around the roulette machine, and that's the type of product that you see some slots in the back, but we just have a land-based casino. We want to have a social feel about it, and that's why social casino in terms of an online social casino and a land-based casino might mean more for each other than it intuitively could mean. These are our locations, just to give you a flavor. It's a small country of the Netherlands with, I don't know how many now, 19 million or so inhabitants, so it's not the biggest country in the world. And we are basically quite all over the place. A few exceptions, we're working on that and trying to get the map filled, so to speak. Our company, just from our profile, we've been founded in 1958, so that's a while ago. Founder of the company used to do import of jukeboxes and pinball machines and all of that in the 50s, 60s. We operate these 50 plus, 52 in a few months land-based casinos in Holland. We just exclusively focus on Holland at this stage. Is that? Okay, good. And we are the market leader in the Netherlands if you talk about non-state owned. The biggest company in the Netherlands is a state monopoly, Holland Casino, and they're running 14 locations across the nation. We run at about 25, actually this year closer to 30% of the casino market, non-state. And we have about 5,000 slot machines and e-table games, I would call them. You just saw the roulette. So we have table games in an electronic version because we're not allowed to do live table games. Only the state monopolist is allowed to do so. We purely have a B2C business, so we don't engage in any B2B type of stuff. And we run a multi-brand. The brand you see in the back is our main brand, Jack's Casino, that runs about 80% of our business, and we have a few smaller brands on the side. If you look at our online experience, that has been quite thin. We've been looking into entering the online gaming market now for a few years, waiting for the legislation to come in. We have been operating an online business on casual gaming over a number of years. To be frank, it's not been much of an effort because we've been expanding our land-based casino so much. It's just a small fraction of side business. It's a promising URL, I should say, because in the US, or in English, you would call this the www.gaming.com site, so I think it's a pretty good name. We've not been exploring that so much. We have to do. Basically, it's casual gaming. We have some blackjack on there as well, but as said, we've been playing around with that more than actually exploring it. And that's something we will definitely do moving forward. The social casino solution, that's something that's in the works. So if anybody is interested in sharing your thoughts, what you want to do with the land-based casino, make sure to look us up. It's either me or Daniel van Dijkman over there, who's setting up our online iGaming business. And as said, the real money gaming, we've been having a lot of discussions on that in the Netherlands over many years. In 2007, there was a proposal for our parliament to give one license away, and guess, that was meant to go to Holland Casino, a state monopolist. We're happy that the market sort of blocked that and in the attempt to open the market, but then now almost 10 years further down the road, we have to see how we get that in the hands of all the land base as well. So estimation is 2015. The target date is the 1st of January, but to be honest, I don't think that the Dutch government will be able to make that date. What about the size? You have heard maybe some numbers this morning. I would call them guesstimates. The size of the market on the GGR side for the online real money gaming business would be somewhere in the range of 200 to 500 million. It's a large range, but the research on this is not conclusive, I should say. There is an H2 Capital report that came up with a number of 180 million a few years ago, but the business is growing. We think these are conservative estimates, so the market is bigger. And it really determines also whether you include sports or not. Sportsbook is a pretty significant proportion of this market. And so far, only about 25% of this market is slots and casino related products. So there's still much to be gained. If you look at the land-based short odd market, we run at about 1.2 billion euros. So the land-based market clearly is still much bigger. But the growth is in the online side. There have been many bigger players, as you might have heard, enter the market, Unibet, PokerStars, etc. The Dutch player does have a good profile. They're good spenders. So despite the fact that it's a small country, I think they're ranking number 7 in terms of online poker worldwide. So for a small country like that, that's interesting to know. Nevertheless, the market so far, we should dominate. It's not a gray market, it's just an illegal market. Online gaming is not allowed in terms of real money gaming, but we have a government that's pretty sweet, to be say, for .com operators, so they don't beat them up. No, they pet them in a way, and okay, that's the strategy they chose, but they want to make sure that if they regulate it, that the canalization rate, as they call it, gets very high, so they want to avoid that there's still a big black market out there, and that's the way they want to approach it. The Dutch culture is very much a consensus type of culture, trying to come up with solutions everybody likes, and that's what we're seeing here. So they came up with something they called the prioritization criteria. That basically means that you're not allowed to do your website on a .nl extension, you're not allowed to do it in English, in Dutch, and you're not allowed to do it or make advertising, but affiliates are allowed, you know. So you can imagine, with most of the people in Holland still speaking English as well, it's not really a huge hurdle for their business. So we would say what we see now is effectively condoning, and we have to see what that means moving forward, because these guys basically took the largest part of the market already. And of course you could say, why don't you enter the market then? And as we didn't. Of course, we are a legal land-based operator. We have our licenses. As I just showed, the business on that side is much bigger, so we don't want to jeopardize a big profitable business with the potential small online business at this stage. Just from my understanding, because I noticed that there was quite some discussion on what is social gambling, which seems to be a contradiction in terms. How do you look at real money gaming, etc.? These are just my definitions, so we'll show you what I'm talking about if we move forward. For me, the social part basically is the free play or the pay for some credits. You can do some casino games, but there is no actual gambling element to it. The gambling is virtual. Everything you win can never be paid out. As soon as you get the payout rates here in there, we would say it's real money gaming. That's gambling. So you have a wager, you have a chance, and you have a potential real payout. Now, for those who have been at the session of Justin Franzen earlier, you might have noticed that even the definition of that game of chance and etc. is not that clear, and it might be different in each country. But for the sake of this analysis, so to speak, I like to keep it as simple as that. And then on the real money gaming side, we see, of course, the online side, but we see the land-based side. We might see some interesting combinations. I saw some interesting stuff at the ICE big exhibition last week, where these online and offline things are being combined, and server-based gaming techniques are entering the market. So it's pretty exciting what's going on. Just a view of these three elements then, just to get a bit of a flavor. And we can debate, the overlap we see here, whether that's bigger or smaller effectively. Our current assessment of the market is that probably the overlap between social and land-based is bigger. Between social and online is not that big, and there are all kinds of ways of looking at that. And you have your view on that, I guess, because it's a market you've been looking at quite closely. And of course the land-based side. And when I made this graph, I had an interesting discussion on it because it doesn't really depict well how the market looks. Because if you really look at the size of the market in terms of players, this is more what you should be looking at. And you look at the land-based casino market, which has, we can debate the number of the billions of players, but has over 1 billion players worldwide. The actual gamblers market supposedly is somewhere in the range of 2 to 3 billion, and then you include sports betting, etc. But this could be sort of the size of short-out players. It's a low growth, in some countries even a negative growth market, and it's a slow market in essence, especially because of the regulation and etc. Now, if you look at the online market on the right, it's about 50 million people playing. There's a good growth there, and bigger than the circle you see is the revenue. I'll show that in a sec. And it's a fast-moving market. Whereas if you look at the social casino side, the guesstimates there are that's around 200 million players worldwide. The growth, of course, is explosive. About 2% of these players are actually paying, and it's a very fast and flexible and changing market. Closely looking at what that means in terms of money, I just did some rough rounding there because it's easier to recognize 330 and 300 billion. That's sort of what we see. So the social might be bigger in terms of players, but since only 2% is playing, little is left. But it's the fastest growing part. So the estimates that it will be growing to 7, 8, 9 billion in the coming few years. So that's interesting. What about the conversions? I know that there have been some discussion yesterday on how these markets will converge, and it's not very clear. Of course, there is a market opportunity there, but it's all the question how these markets will be moving. From a technology side and from a content side, that's obvious. And of course, that's why you see these big companies, the IGTs, or the WMSs, and the Caesars move into this market. But what does it mean for players? Do we really see the players move from there to there? Because in a way, we can have conversions in the market from a technology perspective and content perspective. But does it mean we're going to convert the player as well? How is that? For us, a very interesting element. We have a feeling that we expect most of the social casino towards the land-based. We expect less from the social casino to the online casino. And the land-based casino to the online casino is a promising area in terms of leveraging our brand, the trust factor, and making sure we are able to increase the lifetime value, the tenure of our players. That's why we are looking into this market. Is this what's going to happen in 2020? This is one of the scenarios we're looking at. Not sure, but if it's going to happen, there's one thing that's really important, is the fact that these real money gaming elements are so much determined by regulation. So it determines the pace of this business. It's really it's an important element to take into account, because if this is a scenario moving forward, it's clear that regulation will enter the space. Just concluding on this one, I'm thinking about the Netflix solution for gaming. I saw that Playtech had a great solution last week on the ice floor, where you basically have this whole gaming experience, and you're playing on your mobile, and you continue your game while you're sitting at home, and then you go to the casino and you continue to play in that same. Will that work or not? Yeah, maybe, but the regulation in each of these elements is different. So there's still a very, very long way to go from a regulatory perspective before we get into that space. Just shortly for the Netherlands, the Dutch culture has always been very protective, very restrictive on any games of chance. That's just part of our Calvinistic culture in the past. Things are changing, and that's good. And I think that the online space is going to get much more liberty than we have seen on the land-based. But it also means that the land-based needs to get some type of opportunity to upgrade their offering, get more degrees of freedom in there. So there is quite some lobbying going on in this element. I'm not going to beat you up with this, but this is sort of the landscape we are looking at. And I don't think you have any of that in the social space. So don't bother to read it, because it gives you a headache, but this is the stuff we need to deal with every day. As a land-based casino more specifically, this is sort of the space you're looking at from a social perspective. Anyway, what does that mean for you? If you want to move from social into real money gaming, I think it has, of course, a lot of restrictions, but it also means a great set of opportunities. It's not easy. I think for those who've seen the presentation of Rolf just before lunch, he pinpointed some elements that are of real interest if you want to move into that area, and also where potentially still are also opportunities, like working with land-based companies as ours, but it's not easy. But I think for those that understand and get into the space of working with regulation, appreciating it, and including it as part of their strategy, I think you can get a huge, huge benefit out of it. I said, in my view, the regulation is a pain, but as soon as you're in there, we have a lot of benefits from it as well, I should say. It gives you more protection, the market barriers to entry are down, it gives your business more stability, so it may be a little bit more boring from a perspective, but it's from a profitability perspective, it's pretty good. And I think, and we had some debates on this morning, that definitely there is a threat or not, but regulation will be more and more of an issue on the social gaming side as well moving forward. So for you, the question left basically, is this the area you want to go? Do you want to gamble and go real money? We want to do, he's going to socialize, so if you have time to talk about it, interested, just look me up later and we'll see what we can do. That's it.
You said that you are working on the social solution in the works. First of all, if you can elaborate a little bit on that, what it means in the works, and second of all, why are you doing that if you don't believe there are any crossovers between them, and that you don't see it as the way for you to go forward because you believe in RMG?
Yeah. Well, actually, I said we've been doing some casual gaming work over the years. Did that from a commercial perspective, basically as a marketing tool, just to make some money out of it. We also think that if we want to move into the social casino space, it also has to be a business that makes a buck, because we're in business to make money and we're not in business to just do the free stuff. And we looked into the free stuff 3 years ago, setting up a free play casino, solely free play casino. And we didn't think that was the right time, also in terms of the legislation, which was dragging and dragging. But we do think that if you look at the conversion possibility in terms of social casino towards land-based, it's definitely there. If you see the way we are positioning our brand in the Netherlands, we want to reach out for a much broader audience. And we think the social structure is really apt to that. And so I'm a believer of conversion, but I'm sure there are a lot of people that have a different opinion. I think the Playtika guy yesterday, I forgot his name, stated that he sees no conversions going on moving forward. So. Sorry? Yeah, I think there's definitely an opportunity. Yeah.
It's interesting because with Caesars, if you think about the opposite of what they're dealing with right now. Right now, their social makes so much money, and it's not regulated, not taxed. Online gambling to them, if you regulate that, their online gambling is important to them, especially in the U.S. They've launched in New Jersey and in Nevada, and I'll talk about that later. But if they're trying to keep those two worlds as far apart as possible, for fear that one gets regulated.
Currently, legally, you cannot cross-sell from Facebook to RMG, so from a legal point of view,
Well, that's advertising.
sorry? No, I know, I have a license to do one game with Facebook, but currently you are not allowed regulatory to convert them to your No, you can advertise, but I'm saying if you have an application and you are doing acquisition of members for the real money gambling over Facebook, you're not allowed legally
No.
to drive them outside of Facebook.
No, I agree, but what I was saying,
Yeah.
that's a Facebook rule, not legal.
It is on legal statute. I got lost. No, I'm just saying that right now you cannot cross over between them according to the terms and conditions that you have in Facebook, but this is a different...
But that's not regulation, that's because Facebook wants it like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they're the one who allows you to do the real money gambling over Facebook, so
Sure.
you can't hold the rope at both sides.
Yeah. There are more platforms, of course, than just Facebook.
Sorry?
There are more platforms than just Facebook.
No, that's
Of course. Yeah. True. At least, but we think it's, I would call it a very interesting revenue-generating conversion tool. That's probably the way we try to look at it.
I think that, again, my personal opinion is that you need this offering in order to be on several platforms, in order to have your brand in several platforms. You cannot allow yourself not to be there if you want to
Sure,
have a strong
sure.
brand.
Sure.
But regarding the crossover, I don't think this is what needs to drive you to do that. I think it's more of to have the whole offering so people can see that you are in all areas.
Yep.
And you need each one of those lines of business to be profitable by itself. You can't lie
Sure.
crossover. If you have the crossover because of the branding, because of the name, because of all those things, then it's great. It's an additional value to your brand.
It is.
But I don't think you need to build on the crossover. You need to build on the fact that, as you said, you have a strong enough brand, you have the trust
Yep.
parameter inside, and this is why the revenue and the people will come when they will see the revenue.
Exactly.
And all of them speak the same language.
True. True. Yeah.
However, one of the challenges, and I represent a lot of land-based casinos in the U.S. who want a social presence, is that there's not a whole lot of B2B offering. So casinos like yourselves, like my clients, they don't build their own games. In fact, they're prohibited in the land-based world from building their own games. You put it online now, and you try to find a B2B solution for social, and it's very hard.
I personally think that the reason for that is that there are so many applications out there, so many small businesses, that it will be much easier just to purchase one and have someone doing it for you than to develop a B2B business. Because when you need to develop a B2B business in the social environment, the margins that you have because of the Facebook fees, because of the iPhone fees, this 30% actually kills the B2B. And it's much cheaper either to develop it yourself, or moreover, I think the best solution for those kind of land-based casino is to take small companies that have already the experience, not the small ones that just develop something that looks nice, because I saw a lot of application that looks amazing, but will never monetize or never convert. And some of them you want not just for the monetization. For example, a land-based casino, I will want that for a good experience for the members and to be there for a long time, so we'll have the ability to communicate with them with your brand, and not mainly to make the extra bucks, because the extra bucks you can make on the social is not as big, unless you're Playtika, is not as big as you can make in the land-based.
I agree with you.
I hope I answered the question.
No. I don't have a question, but I was making a statement. But I agree
okay.
with you. But it's also that you'd be surprised how many land-based casinos are allergic for making an acquisition in something that they don't so far away from what they understand. I have one client that's looking to acquire, and I don't know anyone else in the United States that's willing to take that leap.
I think they will have to.
So, question for you.
Yep.
Free play versus virtual currency. So we saw earlier this morning that one of your competitors had launched a free play with no virtual currency, no ability to extend the play by purchasing credits, but rather just a free play, I guess, to bring people back to their land-based environment. When you're trying to analyze this, do you want this to be a separate revenue stream with
Yes.
virtual currency?
Yes.
Do you want to
Yeah.
Did you worry about the fact that you might have some limitations in terms of giving offers because then it would be gambling?
Yeah, because there you get into the regulatory trap, so to speak, because anything that is a sort of what they call promotional game of chance, which basically is a marketing tool where you use, for instance, a scratch card or whatever, you can get some kind of perk, which has some monetary value, one way or the other. and you want to use that. There are quite some restrictions around that already under Dutch law. So you have to be very careful the way you shape that. And that's a restriction, true. But we think it's important to still make that step towards a sort of revenue driving business, because as I said earlier, I think each of our businesses, each of our activities has to make their own buck. It's just a philosophy we apply.